In 1993, archaeologists in Ephesus, the ancient Roman city on the western coast of what is now Turkey, uncovered a gladiatorial cemetery. 68 bodies. Men who had trained, fought, and in some cases died inside one of the empire's most demanding physical institutions. The researchers expected what you'd expect: the bones of men who ate meat, heavy animal protein, the diet of warriors. The isotope analysis told a different story entirely. These men ate almost no meat. Their primary food was barley. Their second food was beans. Their third was a calcium-rich ash drink made from plant and bone sources, consumed deliberately after training every single day. And yet the physical reconstruction of their bodies told another story still. Broad shoulders, dense forearms, the muscle mass of men who trained hard and recovered harder. A gladiator eating barley and beans, training 6 days a week for combat, looks like that. How does a man with almost no dietary animal protein build the body of a professional fighter? That question is what this video is about. The world that made them. The gladiatorial schools of Rome, called ludi, were not what most people picture. They were not barbaric pits where men were thrown together and told to survive. The Ludus Magnus, the largest of these schools, sat 100 meters from the Colosseum in Rome. It had a practice arena, a hospital ward, a kitchen, and a physician. The training was systematic. The diet was managed. These were professional athletes operating inside a professional institution, and the institution had learned, through generations of trial, what actually built a body that could take damage, recover, and perform again within days. The gladiators were called hordearii by the Roman public. The barley men. Not because they were poor, not because they couldn't afford meat, because the trainers, the doctores, had observed something across decades of producing combat athletes. Barley built mass differently than meat. Barley built the kind of tissue that held up. The physician Galen of Pergamon, writing in the 2nd century CE, documented the gladiatorial diet in enough detail that modern researchers have been able to cross-reference his descriptions with the 2014 bone isotope analysis from Ephesus. The match was precise. Low animal protein, high complex carbohydrates, strategic use of legumes, daily mineral supplementation. This was not an accident or poverty. This was protocol. The daily structure looked like this. Training began before sunrise. The first meal was not immediate. There was a gap between training and eating, intentional, structured into the day. The meal itself was barley porridge, tisana, cooked thick, sometimes mixed with vegetables or olive oil. The second meal, taken in the afternoon or evening, brought in the beans, lentils, chickpeas, fava beans. Protein, but delivered slowly, in combination with what had already been absorbed. The calcium drink, ash from burned plant matter and animal bone, mixed with water, was taken in the evening. Modern researchers have identified this practice as a deliberate post-training mineral replenishment strategy, predating the concept of recovery nutrition by nearly 2,000 years. 3 foods, 1 timing structure, an institution that had removed everything that didn't contribute to the outcome. And now here is what makes this harder to dismiss. The gladiators were not training for aesthetics. They were training to absorb punishment, generate force, and recover fast enough to do it again. The body that diet produced was a working body, not a photographed body. A body that had to perform under conditions most modern fitness approaches have never been tested against. The Ludus Magnus closed in the 4th century, as gladiatorial combat fell from Roman practice. The dietary protocol went with it, not recorded in training manuals, not carried forward in any systematic way. What filled the gap eventually was a different theory entirely. By the late 20th century, the fitness industry had built its nutritional model around a single assumption. Muscle requires protein, therefore more protein produces more muscle. The supplement industry grew to a $55 billion annual market on the back of that assumption. 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Whey isolate within the anabolic window. Casein before bed to prevent catabolism through the night. The problem is not that protein is irrelevant. The problem is what that model displaced. When protein maximization became the organizing principle of the diet, carbohydrate became the enemy, the thing you reluctantly consumed before training, if at all. The foods the gladiators built their entire dietary system around: barley, legumes, slow-digesting complex carbohydrates, became the foods modern fitness culture either restricted or ignored. And the men following that modern model are building bodies that look adequate at 35 and start breaking down at 42. The gladiators' diet was not a limitation, it was a precision instrument. And the mechanism that made it work, the reason barley and beans built professional fighters, is something the supplement industry has never had a financial interest in explaining to you. Here is what it was. The first food: barley. Barley is a slow-digesting complex carbohydrate. That description doesn't capture what it actually does in the body of a man training hard. So let's go one level deeper. When you train, you deplete muscle glycogen, the stored fuel your muscles run on. The speed at which you restore that glycogen determines how quickly your muscle fibers can begin the repair and growth process. This is not a secondary concern. Glycogen depletion is the limiting factor in muscle recovery. Without restoration, the protein you consume has no favorable environment to act in. Barley restores glycogen slowly and completely. Its low glycemic index means the release is extended, not a spike and crash, but a sustained restoration that keeps the anabolic environment available for hours rather than minutes. The gladiators were not eating barley because it was cheap. They were eating it because it worked like a sustained release recovery engine that protein alone cannot replicate. This is the mechanism that Loop 1 was waiting for. The gladiators didn't need high animal protein because the barley was doing the foundational work that protein cannot do, restoring the cellular environment that makes muscle growth possible. The second food: beans. Lentils, chickpeas, fava beans, the Roman legume. These are not low-quality protein sources. They are complete protein sources when combined with the grains already present in the meal. The amino acid profiles of barley and legumes complement each other in a way that produces all 9 essential amino acids, including leucine. Leucine is the amino acid that triggers the mTOR pathway, the cellular switch that initiates muscle protein synthesis. The threshold for leucine activation is approximately 2 to 3 grams per meal. The gladiatorial barley and bean meal reached that threshold, not through maximization, through sufficiency. This is the architecture of the protein strategy. Not flood the body with amino acids constantly and hope the muscle uses them, but hit the leucine threshold deliberately, in combination with a glycogen-restored cellular environment, and let the anabolic signal do its work. The modern protein maximization model misses this because it treats protein as the only variable. The gladiators had figured out, empirically through decades of observing what produced durable muscle, that protein is one variable in a system that requires all variables to be functioning simultaneously. The third food: the calcium ash drink. This is the element that surprises researchers most. The drink, made from the ash of burned plant material and animal bone, dissolved in water, was a mineral delivery system. What it contained was primarily calcium, magnesium, and potassium, the electrolytes that govern muscle contraction, nerve signaling, and cellular hydration. Here is what this addresses. Loop 3, the hidden cost of the modern protein maximization approach. High dietary protein increases urinary calcium excretion. Men eating 200 to 300 grams of protein daily are leaching minerals faster than most diets replenish them. The gladiators, eating far less protein, still built deliberate mineral replenishment into their daily practice because they understood that the machinery of muscle function runs on minerals, not just amino acids. 3 foods, 3 distinct mechanisms. Barley: restore the glycogen environment. Beans: hit the leucine threshold through complementary protein. Ash drink: replenish the mineral infrastructure that makes muscle contraction possible. Not a stack, a system. Here is what this looks like applied to a man over 40 who has been told his muscle-building problem is insufficient protein. The problem is almost certainly not insufficient protein. At 40, 45, 50, the men following modern protocols are typically eating more protein than the gladiators consumed in a week. and many of them are recovering poorly, sleeping poorly, and watching their body composition shift, despite doing everything the label on the protein tub told them to do. The mechanism explains why. Chronically elevated dietary protein without adequate complex carbohydrate creates a recovery environment that looks like this. Muscle glycogen is partially depleted. The anabolic environment is suboptimal. The leucine signal fires but lands in a cell that isn't ready to act on it, and the excess protein is either excreted or converted to glucose at a metabolic cost. The body is working hard to process a surplus of one nutrient, while running low on the nutrient that would make the surplus useful. This is what the gladiatorial model corrects. Not by eliminating protein, the beans are still there, but by rebuilding the architecture. Carbohydrate as the base, protein as the trigger, minerals as the infrastructure. And now the hidden trap from Loop 3 closes fully. The men spending the most money on protein supplements are often the men most deficient in the variables that would make protein supplementation work. They are flooding one input while starving three others. The gladiators had no supplements. What they had was a complete system, and it built men whose bones, 2,000 years later, still carry the isotopic signature of what they ate. That's not a coincidence. That's a protocol. Here is how to translate the gladiatorial dietary system into the life of a man who is not training 6 days a week in a Roman ludus, but who wants the same underlying mechanisms working in his body. Food 1. The barley base. Replace one processed carbohydrate meal per day with whole barley, oats, or a comparable slow-digesting grain. This is not about eliminating carbohydrates. It is about replacing fast-digesting carbohydrate with slow-digesting carbohydrates. Specific instruction. Cook 80 to 100 grams of pearl barley or rolled oats as your post-training meal base. This delivers approximately 60 to 70 grams of complex carbohydrate. Consume within 60 to 90 minutes of training completion. Not immediately. The gladiators had a gap. That gap matters. It allows the acute cortisol spike from training to begin clearing before the insulin response from carbohydrate consumption begins. Self-test. After 2 weeks on this protocol, assess your training recovery. Specifically, how sore are you 48 hours after a hard session? If the soreness has decreased, glycogen restoration is working. Food 2. The legume protein. Replace one protein shake per day with a legume-based protein source. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans, or edamame. Combine with the grain base from Food 1. Specific instruction. 150 to 180 grams of cooked lentils or chickpeas delivers 15 to 18 grams of protein. Combined with the barley meal, the total meal protein reaches 20 to 25 grams, above the leucine threshold for mTOR activation. This is sufficient. It does not need to be more. The grain-legume combination is not optional. Barley alone and lentils alone are incomplete protein sources. Together, they deliver the complete amino acid profile the muscle-building signal requires. Eat them in the same meal. Self-test. Track your protein intake for 1 week using this method. If you are hitting 0.7 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight through whole food sources, you are above the functional threshold. Additional supplementation is not producing additional results. It is producing additional cost. Food 3. The mineral recovery drink. The ash drink is not replicable as the gladiators consumed it. What is replicable is its function. Deliberate post-training mineral replenishment. Specific instruction. Every evening after training, consume one of the following: a mineral-rich electrolyte drink with no added sugar and meaningful calcium, magnesium, and potassium content, or a cup of warm bone broth with a small portion of dark leafy greens, kale, spinach, on the side. Together, these deliver the mineral profile the gladiators were targeting. Calcium for muscle contraction, magnesium for nerve signaling, potassium for cellular hydration. Do this every training day, not occasionally. The gladiators took the ash drink daily. The mineral infrastructure is not something you rebuild in one session. It is maintained continuously. Progression cue. After 4 weeks, assess your sleep quality and muscular cramping. Both are direct markers of mineral status. Improvement in either confirms the mechanism is working. Go back to that cemetery in Ephesus. 68 men whose lives ended inside a brutal institution, but whose bodies, reconstructed from bone and isotope analysis 20 centuries later, carry a message the supplement industry has spent decades drowning out. They ate barley, they ate beans, they drank minerals, and they built the kind of muscle that held up under real conditions. Impact, force, damage, recovery, not once, but week after week, year after year, inside the most demanding physical institution the ancient world produced. The protein shake was not missing from their protocol. Their protocol was complete without it. What modern fitness sold you is one input: protein, extracted from a system and resold without the system around it. What the gladiators ate was the system itself. The protein wasn't the foundation, it was the spark. The barley was the foundation. The beans were the signal. The minerals were the infrastructure. You now have all three.